all here. Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. Jim, do you want to do a roll call for us? 7:05.
Let's see here. Who's I wanted to get a list here.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if Michaela, you have the list and might be.
Yeah, I can do the roll call if you want.
Yeah, you can do the roll.
Please, if you don't
All right,
mind.
Michelle Ziemba.
Here.
Tim Dannenfelser.
Here.
Jim Finnegan.
Here.
Jonathan Hayter.
Here.
Manny Lynn Harris.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay, and I believe the only agenda item we have is 0T Parker, and if I don't see Joanne out there, but I believe we were in recess when we came out to postpone till today to actually do a site visit, which unfortunately was not able to happen. So I believe we can go right back into recess as a board if that's it. Yep. So we'll go into recess, and as a board, it's time for our discussion. I don't know if there's any questions.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can.
I want to speak before you go into recess to discuss your vote. You know, all of the objectors got to speak. They spoke 5 minutes apiece. I think I'm entitled to at least 5 minutes.
As I understand it, we're past the point of taking testimony, but seeing that you're part applicant, I think there's been a lot of chances to actually speak to everyone.
No, I haven't had a chance to speak my piece, and I want it.
I think we're gonna need to see how Joanna would handle this, because as I understand it, the testimony is complete and we're actually in recess. So it's actually the board's chance to actually see if we have any further questions or work this as I understand the process.
Right.
I'm not
so
sure. Oh.
Hi, the roads were bad, so I was just trying to get home. So Manny, when we did end, we had gone into recess for the board to make their final decision. It appeared that there was going to be a site walk, and so if there had been a site walk or there was new information, I think the board may have entertained additional testimony from both the applicant as well as members of the public. But at this point, there was no additional site walk. There's no necessarily additional information. So my recommendation would be that the board continue its deliberation in recess. If the applicant wants to say something, I think you have the discretion to come out of recess, but I think that would also invite additional testimony from the public. And it seems that we've closed that portion. Certainly, if the board had questions for Mr. Hawkins, he would be able to respond.
Okay, thank you. That's as I understood it too. So, Mr. Hawkins, we're going to remain in recess and deliberate as a board, and we'll come out of recess, hopefully with our decision.
How long was recess?
Okay, so on behalf of the board, is there any questions that you have for the applicant, or is there any discussion that someone would like to drive? I do have some for you as a board, but I'd like to give you guys a chance to go first.
Well, so Manny, it's Jim Finnegan. So I did do a drive-by. I did not go onto the property, but I did go to the property. And I did observe the property, and I did note that there is a grade in the property that does slope towards Mr. Espy's property at 4 T Parker. So I am confirming that. I visually saw that. And also in the context of what Mr. Espy did provide in pictures of just showing the runoff and the ice on his property, I felt confirmation that the property does have a grade that slopes to Mr. Espy's property. I am not sure if there has been any discussion between the two property owners regarding any water, surface water remediation, any means of consideration of swales. But I can understand why Mr. Espy, and I actually commend him for being calmer than he would be, because I believe that property, with the way it's graded naturally today, if it gets clear cut to put a house on it, I can understand Mr. Espy's concerns as an immediate abutter.
Okay, anything else that the board wants to discuss?
I do just want to remind the board that the variance is with respect to the
Septic system.
For the septic with the DEM guide and the setbacks. It is not about whether he can clear cut the property or essentially build a house. He could clear cut the property and put nothing on it, and there's really nothing that the town can do. He does have the right to do that. So I do think that we should keep that in mind when making the decision.
Yeah, I think additionally, because the property is a lot of record, I think we have to take that into consideration as well, and that it's my belief that there is a use for this property, and I think we have to take that into accordance too as a board. A lot has weighed. I don't know how the board feels, but a lot has been weighed in, considering the property was for sale for a while. I think there was a lot of opportunity to for the property to be used in many different ways, including what the applicant is being asked to do with it. So is there any further questions that the board has or wants to discuss? One of the things I'd like to do as a board is, I'm not sure how quickly we want to come out, but I don't hear anyone stepping up with questions for us or for the applicant, is could we potentially do just a proxy amongst ourselves for a vote in favor per the template that we've been provided? Is that of interest of the board to see how we would vote? I see Tim and Jonathan nodding. Is that a yes, gentlemen? And
yes, that would be fine with me.
And Jim and Michelle, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And again, it's just for a proxy vote for us as just a sample understanding. It is to approve the requested variance of the setback for the septic system, and that's all that's being requested in front of us. Nothing further. I'll do, if you don't mind, I'll just do the roll call to keep it easy. Jim.
Nay.
Michelle.
A.
Did I sorry, that was approve.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Jonathan. You're on mute. I think I saw your lips say approved.
Approved, yeah.
Okay. Tim.
Nay.
Did I hear nay or yay?
Nay with an N.
Okay. I think that we should probably discuss where some of this. We probably should discuss this a little further as a board.
Yeah, Manny, do you want to go through the kind of the elements and see, what people's feelings are with each of the?
Yeah, I think so. I don't have any list of elements. I'm actually traveling, so
Manny, I have them.
Okay, please.
So Manny, do you want me to read each one, or do you want each member to just explain which standard they don't agree?
Yeah, it might be helpful to talk. Maybe in your case, Jim, having the position of nay, and Tim, maybe you guys could pick and help us understand where that gap may be of the applicant, if that's okay, just to help us expedite this discussion. Maybe you could go first, Jim.
Yeah, I can go first. Primarily, my concern lies with, I understand the variance is a request for the septic. I understand that, but at the end of the day, the variance would allow potentially any owner, whether it's the current owner today or future owner, to build on that property. My issue with that is specifically to standard number 3, the granting of the requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan upon which the ordinance is based. Based on my observations and the testimony provided, especially from the abutters, I believe that the development of this property will have impair and have an intent and purpose of affecting the purpose of the zoning ordinance. I don't believe the ordinance was made to essentially allow the development of this property to have such, I believe, a consequence to the abutters and to especially the property of Mr. Espy at number 4, who is strongly opposed to the development of this. I take that into strong consideration when making my decisions. And I believe that there has not been any discussion between the property owners, and that should this board approve this variance, then Mr. Espy would be at some detrimental harm as an abutter.
Before we dig into that one, let's see if Tim, can you share yours, and then we can probably discuss if it's different. We can discuss them all at the same time.
Yeah, it's actually not much different. I did feel that way. I felt like it in the beginning testimony. I felt like there was very little room on their part to make a couple little changes, maybe that would be involving limiting the actual size of the house from a certain number of bedrooms. And I just didn't feel like that there was enough movement available on their part to maybe bring the variance closer to what least amount of variance necessary. So the other thing is, one of the things that has stuck in my mind is that the testing that was done quite a long time ago. And I just believe there may have been natural change over the course of the last 7 or 8 years since that testing was done. That could have changed maybe the scope of the impact that this would have on the surrounding properties. And if there's evidence that would suggest otherwise, then I'm perfectly willing to take that into consideration. But that's kind of how I'm feeling right now.
So let's if we don't mind as a board, I don't know if Jonathan or Michelle, you have any questions of them. I do have one. I'd like to start with yours, Jim, just because you went first, if that's okay.
Sure.
Of your position of the affecting the general character, or at least the current character, do you agree that at least the abutter property today has water that may be flowing on the property today without any changes to the land? And I don't know if, first I'll ask that. I think that there's enough evidence that anything that this land is contributing to any abutters is being contributed with or without any changes to this property. Do you feel the same?
I believe that there is a current right now that there is an issue with surface water. My personal belief is that the development of that property will contribute to that. There has not been any attempt to unless we want to open it up and ask Mr. Espy, has there been any discussion between property owners to take into consideration the concerns there? And I do believe truly that the town of Foster and its zoning requirements, and I do not believe would expect that property owner next door would have to be possibly have a consequence of having that property developed. Now, don't get me wrong. If the owners would only move the septic system and put a smaller structure there, then they can just go forward on this lot and just not get a variance. But that's up to them. Again, I'm understanding what Tim is saying, that I do not believe there's been any effort made to deal with the testimony we've had presented with the concerns and the impact it's going to have to the abutters as well as the general characteristics of the area. And it's surface water and development of that lot. When I looked at that, I personally looked at it. I don't know if anyone else did on this board, but I can understand and appreciate Mr. Espy's concerns.
Jim, I wanted to clarify, because you are talking about development, and so obviously we're making a record, and this can be appealed one of two ways. So when you are talking about development and surface water, again, it seems that you do not believe that the lot should be developed at all. I mean, that is how it's coming across. So can you clarify that?
Yes, I am not saying the lot cannot be developed. I'm saying that the approval of the variance for a septic system to allow the development of a 4-bedroom house that the system would support, I believe will have a detrimental impact to the abutter's property. That's what I believe. As we are approving what we're approving in that septic system.
So my understanding, Jim, and maybe you can help me clarify, even for me, maybe I'm missing something, is that the town ordinance for the setback of a septic system is 100 feet from the boundaries of the property. The size of the property wouldn't allow this septic to be placed anywhere on the property, as I understand the dimensions of it. And considering that this property has been grandfathered in for its type of use, and the septic is sort of the gateway for its use, there's at least an understanding that potentially the septic system should be allowed, because when you look at DEM's reference of setbacks, which I believe is 10 feet, if my memory serves me correct. I'm traveling, so again, I don't have my notes with me, and I apologize. Sure. So I believe the requested variance is substantially greater than 10 feet, as I understand it. And again, this property does, as I understand it, have that use due to the lot of pre-existing conditions. So with regard to the septic approval, so first of all, we weren't presented by the expert. The septic system was designed and approved and done many years ago. Second of all, the type of septic system being put in and that is offered is technically, there are other more expensive septic systems that may likely work for that property, but that was never offered up for testimony. Again, there are various things that were considered that weren't brought into testimony. The lack of effort in the consideration of some of the concerns for approving the septic system and the knock-on effect it would have, I believe, doesn't meet the standard worksheet for certain points. I only pointed to one. What I'm saying is the approval of that septic system and the concerns raised are legitimate concerns that I've taken into account carefully. Now, so I have a question for you, Tim, before maybe I have a question for Joanna. You mentioned, Tim, least, it isn't the least variance necessary. And I think you were referencing the house. There is no discussion of the home any further in this variance request. And again, understanding that we're at the 100 feet setback and the necessity for a septic system for the ability for the applicant to use this property. And they're, as I understand it, over by some good margin above DEM's requirement for setbacks. Where is the, what do you, knowing that the septic system can't fit anywhere on the property, can you help me understand where they could ask lease relief?
My issue was simply, yeah, okay, so my issue was simply with the fact, as I mentioned before, I just don't know if all of the other options have been, I don't know, it's up to them whether they can try to figure out how something, maybe to offer something to the neighbor in terms of getting a different septic, but I just feel like there was no leeway there. And there was no effort on their part to maybe come up with an alternative plan. It was kind of like just, this is how they wanted it. This is concrete and in stone. So I just feel like there wasn't enough effort made to try to alleviate some of the concerns of that neighbor.
Do you see it similarly to me? Whereas if the septic system was 1 inch, right, just 1 inch in size, it still wouldn't fit on the property per the 100-foot setback.
I mean, I guess so. Like I said, I'm not an expert in those types of things. I have to go on what I'm told by experts and by people that are testifying. And as far as I'm concerned, whether it's a 4-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom house, that's not even the concern, as I understand it. It's that perhaps if it was a 3-bedroom house, the septic system would be either designed differently or smaller. So these are things that I don't know. I haven't been offered any explanation as to if everything had to be a 4-bedroom house, so based on a certain septic design, or as Jim mentioned before, if there are different types of designs of septics that would make it more amenable to causing less problem, perhaps, to the neighbor's property that he has. So
Okay.
And Manny, I want to clarify the record too. One is we have there's no misperception on my part that we have testimony from Mr. John B. Hawkins. His intent, even though he's not the property owner today, he's the applicant. His intent is to build a house on the structure. That's testimony. We're not approving a septic system variance so it can stay undeveloped. The testimony is they are seeking this approval to have a variance, which that variance, even if the intent is changed, this property, once this variance is approved, can be sold to another buyer and this property can be developed. But the point of the applicant, he's flat out said, is to develop this and build a house on this property at a certain size. That's what we were presented with. That's their testimony. So that's to do that is to clear this property and to put up a structure as they provided the testimony for. I believe that will have a negative knock-on effect to the abutter property, plain and simple. And I believe that's a contradiction. I disagree I can't agree to the standards worksheet based on the facts presented.
It's okay. Maybe I can ask a question, Joanna. Maybe you can help too. As I understand it, and I'm not completely caught up on what taken is, but is it possible that you could share a little bit? And the board, where I'm coming from with trying to ask Joanna this question so that you hear this is, the property is of existing record of its current size for use, and as I understand it, to build a home. And the gateway, right? And I'm not using a technical term, but the gateway to build a home is having the septic system. And because of the size of the lot, that's what the variance is about, not the home. That's already allowed. So I would like Joanna to help us understand what a taken impacts the town, please.
Sure. So I wanted to clarify one point as far as what the applicant and what Mr. Dannenfelser was saying, we perhaps this and perhaps, and we haven't heard. I mean, the applicant is not necessarily required to offer some of the evidence. And I'm sorry, I should have kind of jumped in right when you were talking. I mean, their expert testified that this was the only septic that could go on the property. This was the best system for the property. Some of the things that you are looking for them to say is not really their responsibility. If there are abutters who want to present expert testimony, abutters are welcome to hire experts, and they in the past people have done so. So some of those things the burden would be on an abutter or an objector to present the expert testimony that way. But as far as a taking occurs when a town or city or state essentially removes, a taking can occur by eminent domain, where they come in and say, we're going to buy your property because we want to build an airport or something along those lines. Or it can occur when a town, by regulation, by zoning ordinance, by denial of permits and things of that nature, removes the property owner's ability to use the land, use the land for its kind of functional or stated purpose, and leaving it with essentially no use. And if in fact a taking occurs, the town can be sued, and then the town has to pay fair market value for that property. So that some of the statements and I think a lot of what was testified to is, people don't want a house on this lot. It is a substandard lot of record. It is a buildable lot. So when we're talking about the effects on abutters, the variance that's requested, the effect needs to be directly related to the septic. So normal concerns with relative to a septic are, is it going to affect my well? What does the leach field look like? Things like that. Not necessarily runoff that is going to come from development of a house per se. That's really not necessarily the question in front of us. Whether this gets appealed either way, we do need a very clear record with standards, because I need to be in a position to defend the board's decision. So it could be appealed, or the town could be sued for a take. I mean, those are options. Abutters can also appeal a decision if the abutter is not happy, and abutter is technically an aggrieved party, so they could also issue an appeal or file an appeal with Superior Court.
Okay, no, actually, that's very helpful to know. So Manny, is the reason that you brought that up, particularly with Joanna at this point, is just to let us know that kind of this is the road we're going down? Is that what you're?
It's more to understand that the decision of this board has consequences directly on behalf. And remember, I've expressed it in the past that our job is really to interpret our laws, and that's it, right? We're not really, we really shouldn't be going beyond that. We should be understanding that right now we're being faced with a request to use the property as I believe the applicant would have the right to, and the gateway to use it that way is a septic system variance, and our town has 100-foot setback. Understanding that if it was paper thin, it still wouldn't fit on the property. So the variance for a septic location seems logical, right? It seems like an obvious request of the applicant to use to get the buildable lot effect, if that makes sense. And understanding that the septic system in itself and location, we've asked those questions. We've heard that this is the best place for it. I'm not an expert on what type, so I would leave that alone. I don't know that changing it from a 4-bedroom or 3-bedroom would make it even more paper thin. So I just don't know as a board, as my opinion is, I think the gateway to allowing the use of this property is through that septic system. And it is of my opinion that I believe they're near the 50-foot setback, which is again up to 5 times, and again I'm paraphrasing, could be substantially more than the 10-foot requirement that DEM has to allow this property to have that use. And I'm just trying to make sure that the understanding of how we move forward with this, how it impacts from after our position forward.
So would you mind telling me again when we just did that proxy vote, how did that turn out?
It, again, my
Failed.
chicken,
It
yeah,
was 3-2, so it did not pass.
correct.
You need 4 to approve.
You know, and again, I think that, you know, as a board, we can add stipulations of, you know, having to manage runoff if we wanted to add some conditions as well. I just don't want to extend beyond what I perceive as the limits of our roles as a board.
Well, I'm going to take some exception to that because, again, I feel we're being painted as we have to approve this, that this can't be developed any other way, that we have to approve it because one is it is a grandfathered in lot. It is a smaller lot. An expert testified that put in or approved designed the septic system. It's not even in, I don't believe. Is it in?
No, it can't go in.
It's not even in. So
well, it can't
there's been no discussion, but the point is we were presented by the one expert that developed it, designed it many years ago. There are other options, I believe they weren't presented to us. I believe I can bring that information as a board member, and that, again, no one is impeding anyone's ability to develop this property with a septic system and possibly a septic system that is more modern and designed. But the point is what we are presented with is what we're presented with. I don't believe it's black and white in that we have to approve it because that's what we're presented with. It's a developable lot. Yes, it can be developed. It can be developed differently, and it can be possibly done in a different way that allows something that's less impactful to the abutters.
But Jim, I think that you do have to take what you have in front of you, and the potential. I mean, basing your decision saying that there's a potential that it could be developed another way with a less intrusive or with a lesser effect, you have not heard expert testimony which supports that. So you need to have a basis. Well, if I go to court, you need to have a basis to have challenged their expert's testimony. Abutters are welcome to bring an expert, to bring their own engineer, their own depending upon what it is, surveyor, whatever, and say, this is, look, you don't need to do it this way. You can do it this way. And it would be least intrusive. And then you have, okay, it's not the least means necessary, but to say it could be done a different way, you need to base that on typically expert testimony needs contradicting expert testimony.
I think additionally, Jim, you were taking offense to sort of the sort of just trying to help us coalesce as a board to come out with a nice recommendation. My intent was not that. My intent is that we can't extrapolate that other testimony was possible, and the only expert testimony that was put in front of us was from the applicant. So just to be clear, we can't say that nothing or not enough was done when the only expert testimony in front of us was through the applicant. And frankly, that's the only data I have myself, right? Trying to keep this in the understanding of the purview that I hold as just one vote on this board, is that I heard that the septic system would fit here, wouldn't have an impact. And as I understand it, it's a pretty reasonable setback request. So that's all I was trying to do, was trying to help us talk through this with an understanding that we shouldn't really, in my opinion, shouldn't be extrapolating a testimony that did not occur.
That's a fair statement. I guess I'll also state then, based on that I do not believe then that enough information was provided by the expert in pointed questioning or other information that would give me the ability to make a decision on this, because of the concerns raised, that even more questions were raised when the expert testified. So So my feeling is, one, that I still believe there's an issue with number 3 of the standard for me. And 2 is I also feel that there is not enough information about the impact of approving the septic system based on the observation I made of the sloping of the grade into the abutter's property. I don't think that was responded to with enough detail. So I'm agreeing with Tim that it's just the totality of the information provided to make a decision here that we protect the rights of the property owner today and the applicant, but also strongly in consideration of those concerns raised by the abutters is just as important to me as the applicant's rights to develop that property.
I just hope in the future, Jim, that if you have further questions of expert testimony, that you will ask them so that we're not sitting here today wishing that we would have asked or had more information. So I hope next time, if faces a board, that you will ask all your questions so we're not sitting here right before a potential vote saying that you still have questions. Sorry, Tim, I cut you off.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt. The only thing I remember, there was a lot of questions that Jim asked that necessarily were not answered.
That's
There
right.
was a lot of, well, this is just the way it's done. And
That's right. I asked the question.
I asked it, and a lot of times
I wasn't getting real clear answers. So
He
that's
asked
not
him-
a fair characterization. I just felt the answers weren't forthcoming. And I felt the expert was getting indignant that he was being asked questions for something he did many years ago.
Well, in fact, I believe that Jim asked a simple question about the length of time it had been designed initially. And the guy, I believe the expert took offense to the fact that it might not still be relevant and that we really shouldn't even make that an issue because we don't know anything about it. So, sometimes the way things are said do affect people's decisions, not necessarily in terms of what granting a variance or not, but if you feel like that people are evading or just are being not necessarily upfront with you about whether or not a new design would be helpful or hurtful, that gives you a little pause as to just go ahead and automatically say that I'm going to approve something.
So my question for specifically you two will hold the vote. Do you need more information before you could cross this chasm? And do you think it's a path that we should come out of recess to ask for more, or do you think you guys have enough information in front of you to make this decision?
I'm perfectly willing to look at any more information there could be. Like I said, I don't have any issue with the Hawkins doing the building. I just have some issues in terms of what I do and do not understand about, look, the one issue that gets me is the design of the septic based on something that was done a long time ago. Now, if Joanna tells me that I can't have that impact my decision, then I won't be able to let it impact my decision. At this time, it does though. So
I don't know if she would say that, but DEM approved.
Okay.
DEM
Okay,
approved.
well, it either can be a reason or it can't. I mean, if it's just to say, well, okay, go ahead and build it because you have 5 times the legal limit based on DEM. But then again, we're not really technically following what Foster has put into place. I mean, so who are we supposed to? What do you want us to do here? I mean, I'm not.
Tim, my question, my statement to you was more about that DEM, the authority having jurisdiction, approved or I'm not sure what the proper word is, but they re-allowed, right? So it's an approved position. It's not, DEM has already passed that point and approved that was a valid test and have renewed it. So, I'm just trying to help us.
Okay.
My thought is what would make you believe that it's not valid? Seeing that the authority having jurisdiction has actually declared it to have value. I just wouldn't want to win have to defend that position when DEM has renewed it.
So, okay, so what you're saying is it's all been, obviously, you just tell me that it's all been officially reevaluated and reapproved based on the last, 7 years? I'm sorry, was it 7 years that it was done?
DEM did not, DEM has extended all of these permits for it, and they did it, their regs extended anything that was already granted by X amount of years, I think everything got like an additional 2 years at some point in time. So they didn't reevaluate anything, but their position was these are still good. So and again, we've not necessarily heard expert testimony saying that DEM was wrong in any way. And if we had, that would have been helpful if we're trying to defend that a board's position that what DEM has approved is not appropriate. I mean, that's kind of where we run into. It is very helpful when abutters are challenging DEM decisions and other experts to come in with their own experts who have contradicting, because sometimes they can find them, sometimes they can't, but that makes the board's job a lot easier.
Okay, so basically that opportunity has been given to all the abutters that were all the concerned citizens that are against this going through. That has had plenty of time to be undertaken. That is correct, right?
I mean, this is our third hearing, and I would tell you that I don't think variances are usually one hearing, maybe two. So I think this has been probably the longest variance hearing that I've had.
Okay. I'm as long as I realize what the scope of the limits of my voting, I'm fine with that. I do get it on record, Bill, that I am concerned about the kind of how this is turning out. And in some ways, in some respects, I feel like we've gotten to the point now, well, this has taken so long, so I think we need to just kind of clean this up and, get it approved and get it going, let it go through. So
Tim, I don't take it that way. I know.
No, I'm saying, Manny, I'm not asking you. I'm saying me. I just said this is how I'm feeling about it. Okay, I didn't ask you how you felt about it. I'm telling you my own personal opinion about it. That's it.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
I would just like to say that, specifically to you, is I don't take it that way. I think that as a board, we have the ability to try to cover some of your concerns. So if there's a concern on some of that, we can potentially add it in to how we come out of this with our position. So if there's added concerns that we want to make sure that runoff during the construction of the septic system is managed in accordance to accordance to best practices, I think that's within your purview to have added as an addendum. I'm not asking you to just concede. I'm saying if there's clear issues that you have, let's add them. And I think that as a board, that seems like a logical addition. So don't just move a position. Just let's
no. I'm not going to move a position. Just I think that Joanna actually clarified a couple things for me, which I guess I needed to kind of narrow the scope of what I was considering. But like I said, I still want to get on record that I do have concerns about how this is unfolding. It doesn't necessarily mean I can say no, but that's my feeling about it anyway.
Okay. So Manny, if the direction is that we want to go forward with conditions, then we should discuss what those conditions would be to possibly make this vote go in a better direction.
Jim, I would really appreciate at least that train of thinking.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, again, let's talk about at the end of the day, if this gets approved, we know what's going to happen. So let's figure out, then again, put, as you recommended earlier, let's consider some addendum conditions upon any approval if we're going down that route of approving.
I think it would be more productive of an approach. So maybe you and Tim go first with your thoughts. I kind of frameworked one just a moment ago with Tim, but do you have something that you would think through, Jim?
Well, I guess I'll go to counsel. Joanna, if we're going to talk about conditions to an approval, to what extent can those conditions be where if they're unreasonable, then it's just as well as you're saying no vote?
So yeah, I mean, you can get into weary ground with conditions that, ultimately at the end of the day could just essentially be a no. So a lot of times when we are doing conditions, sometimes we'll talk through them with the applicant to see if it's something that the applicant would be okay with, so that we know we wouldn't have a challenge. But I would say, the condition cannot make it so burdensome that the applicant would not do it, or it would be so financially unfeasible to do it. But I mean, I think if there are concerns that the board wants to address to make neighbors feel comfortable, the applicant could be required to do certain things before the building permit was issued. I mean, that's what you'd attach it to. Building permit may not issue, under this variance is provided X, Y, and Z. So if a neighbor's property was being flooded, I mean, it's not necessarily tied to the variance, but perhaps the applicant would consider something along those lines.
So Tim, I guess Manny and Tim, I mean, right now it's Tim and I are really the ones that have the greatest extent of concern. I guess back to the proxy, Tim, where are you on this? What are your thoughts?
Well, I certainly would. I'd love to figure out a way that if there was an addendum to it. Obviously, I don't want to burden the Hawkins. Okay, I believe they're fine people. But I also I feel a little differently now, because I kind of feel like my the scope of my ability on my vote has been kind of trimmed down a little bit in terms of what I can base my no vote on. And because of the fact that DEM has granted an extension on the approval of plans that are 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, 8 years old, 7 years old, then that was one of my concerns. But Joanna said that they have extended them without even looking at them. So I kind of feel like I can't do DEM's job. So at this point, I think, having also asked Joanna about whether or not the abutters and the concerned citizens had enough time to be able to get their own expert witness. I guess the time frame has been long enough. So I guess that's not something I had considered before, but it has been a number of weeks that we've been able to, discuss this. So I'd have to say that right now, my vote will probably change.
So will your vote, do you want any conditions on your vote?
Well, so the thing about the conditions is I think I'd have to know exactly what that meant, and what the parameters of it. I wouldn't want to feel like the burdensome on the Hawkins would be inordinate. So how, I guess I would have to kind of see what that meant. I don't know what that would mean in terms of, maybe Manny can answer it. I'm not sure.
I don't have answers. Merely trying to help us move the puck forward, if you will. My thought here is, you have something in your head that's that's keeping you both uncomfortable. I would try to focus your thinking around that so that we can move forward. If it sounds like, at least when Jim speaks, he's specific around some water runoff on abutters. I think that I believe, I don't have any expert knowledge, but I would say if some framework of information, some framework of position saying that water runoff during construction of the septic system would be following best practices, I think that could help potentially ease your mind, Jim.
Yeah, and that's so essentially my concern is driven in primarily to that point of the impact of the installation of the septic system and the possible effect of its drainage or any development onto the abutter's property. If we can deal with that, then I'm comfortable with that, because that's my primary concern is the installation of that and based on the pitch of the property into another property. That's the biggest concern.
How would the applicant feel about a condition on your building permit, and not necessarily that's part of this variance, but a condition on your building permit overall be that the town building official, in conjunction with the town planner, would have to be provided some type of plan, engineered or from the expert, and have to be satisfied that the installation of the septic would not cause runoff, or something along those lines. Jim, does that?
Yeah, that's getting at it, because I'm kind of fast forwarding down the. If we say we approve this, the board approves it, then I'm just feeling that if we don't come up with some, which I like your ideas, how does the abutter property, knowing we already saw what today naturally what's happening with that drainage, what happens when it could turn worse, and then that abutter's in some serious problems? I'm just trying to avoid that. Listen, not everyone will be happy here, okay, but I'm just trying to come up with something that I'm primarily concerned with. And I think, Joanna, that's getting to where I want to get, was more of a consultation and agreement on what will mitigate, not obviate, but mitigate the potential impact of the installation of a septic system of that size and design, as well as other issues of water management on that property.
I mean, you could tie it to the building permit and the CO, and leave it to the our building official to make sure that those things were addressed before the building permit and or before the CO. So,
I like it. I like the concept.
And applicants, how do you feel about that? I mean, obviously that's something that you would normally do anyways. I don't necessarily think it's too burdensome of a step. Well, we can't hear you, Mr. Hawkins. I think you're on mute.
I'd like to answer that with a couple of things. First of all, on February 10th, that property was inspected by me and Mr. Antonellis, the town planner. There was no surface water anywhere on my property. There was surface water all over Mr. Espy's property. It was an obvious stream coming down the street, coming down the road. There was a lot of melting snow stacked up from the snow plows along T. Parker Road. And there was no runoff from my lot at all onto Mr. Espy's property.
So, sir, I don't think,
all right, let me finish. I'll be happy to do whatever the state requires, and they do require water containment around any construction. And I'd be happy to use that in making the septic system. even though it would be, in my mind, useless because there is no runoff situation from my property.
So I think that it sounds, Joanna, that it would be acceptable to have
Yeah.
that condition
Okay.
covered. Thank you. Okay, so Joanne, I don't know if you can help us with that condition. Does that help? Does that help Jim and Tim? I know it helps me a little bit further as well.
Yes, that helps. I was just unclear of Mr. Hawkins' nuanced condition about the state containment at construction time, but I think we're a little more broad than that, Joanna.
Yeah.
And tagging, so I think it's more language issues, But the spirit of getting to the heart of mitigation is getting us down the path of getting in the right direction for an approval.
Okay. So, and I think some of the main details of that was to ask that condition for water management or waste surface management during as part of an acceptance of the CO and building permit finalization. Do I understand that correctly, Joanna?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just trying to come up with some language here.
Thank you. We'll give you a few minutes. I just got a couple of questions for the rest of the board. Michelle, Jonathan, does that sort of addendum make sense as well to you both?
Yeah, it does. And I do just want to say that I 100% do share personally Tim and Jim's sentiments and concerns with being in a position to make a decision where for the most part it was pretty clear to me after what I heard at the last meeting that if the abutters have not provided their own expert testimony, that, the consideration of what abutters are experiencing is, for the purposes of the zoning board, taken in less consideration than perhaps some of the members of the zoning board would like. I share in that sentiment, and I'm speaking for myself. But I will say that I did have my mind made up to vote in favor of this variance being granted because it's a substandard lot of record. It's buildable. And it has been offered for sale for quite a time. And this is a family from town. And I know for a fact that if I were in the position to be an abutter, I would want people from town able to build on their substandard lot of record. And it's a tough decision, but you have a property that's been family for a very, very long time, and you have it wanting to stay in the family. And it is a buildable lot. Approvals are in place. As Tim said, I don't necessarily agree that DM is just extending things without taking a look at changes, considering the amount of time that's gone on. And, I want to be able to put that on the record. That is, I share in Tim and Jim's sentiments. I think some conditions are a good idea. And so I welcome going forward with that.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. You're good with the potential addendum?
Yeah, obviously during construction, there should be an erosion control plan submitted. But that is only temporary. So, if Mr. John B. Hawkins wants to be a good neighbor, then he might want to consider doing something more permanent to control any erosion, any water runoff. That's basically all I want to say. Because the erosion control that they use for construction will only last for a couple years. So it's only temporary.
Thank you. Tim, Jim, anything you want to add before we see if Joanna has worked us up something?
No, I think we're all we've spent enough time tonight understanding everyone's position, and that's good. And I think we're all agreeing that we're uncomfortable, but I think the conditions will get us to a place where we can approve this with the conditions. And hopefully Joanna has been using her magic to write some good verbiage for us.
And I think your last point was well said. It's with the information provided in front of us, right? That's sort of how we have to make these decisions. Tim, sorry, you were going to say something?
No, I was going to say I'm okay with what Joanna's going to come up with, I'm sure.
Okay, Joanna, I don't know if you have something worked up for us.
So yeah, I would suggest something along the lines of that the building permit and the certificate of occupancy shall not be issued for the development of the property until the building official is satisfied that any water runoff to abutting properties is contained and mitigated consistent with best practices. I guess I can add with an erosion I mean, I don't know if I need to add erosion. Jonathan, do you have any suggestion?
No, in my experience, you have to provide an erosion control print. But again, that's only that stuff's only temporary. It would only last a couple of years tops.
I am hoping that, like, my thought is that if it's tied to the certificate of occupancy, that the building official is going to be looking for long-term rather than the building permit, certainly for the short term, the construction process, but tying it to the certificate of occupancy should envision long-term solution.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I think what you're getting at is ultimately a more permanent type between the properties is a fabricated swale between the properties that swales out to the road. I think that's really what probably would get us where we want to go. But again, I'm not an expert.
Well, I think that the with best practices part kind of covers
that.
Might
get us there. Yeah.
Right, because the expertise does not have to reside here. It's more about letting the with best practice. Joanne, I think going forward, if you're okay with that as is, I would use that.
Yeah, I think I am. And I think what happens is that gives the building official enough leeway, because I'm sure he's going to talk to the developer, the Hawkins, and I'm sure he'll have some input from the abutter, and that gives him, the building official, well, to him now, I assume it will always be a him, but in any event, that gives the building official the kind of leeway to do what they need to do. You don't want to tie them, kind of box them in. You know what I mean? I think I'd like to give him as much leeway as possible.
Yeah, I think this is a great, I'm very comfortable with this, that yes, it's open-ended enough. I think that as long as it works for the applicant and the board, and it's getting us in the direction to approve this, then everyone should be as happy as I guess they can be. I'm not sure about the abutters that are on the phone call, but
I hope we've been clear that we're concerned, but also the limitations of the information we have has sort of directed us towards trying to make this addendum as best we
and
could.
I think you did a great job, Manny, and also Joanna, that explaining that, you know, the abutters have an obligation also when they have a concern to bring the experts in, and if they have an objection, to support their objection. So it's all fair.
Do we have a draft motion? I think Mike prepared one quite some time ago.
Yeah, Mike, so they're on, yeah, so we do. We have, actually, there's, I believe, two. We're dealing with both. We're dealing with two different variances, I think.
No, they
correct?
got rid of the other one. It's
Okay,
just
because he posted two of them on the Dropbox.
all right. I put the condition in the chat, so who's ever reading the motion has it.
Well, I think it's probably, I for some reason feel it might be me, and I usually print this off, but I didn't print it off this time. But let me, I'm in the Dropbox right now. Okay, so Mike did post two draft motions. We're approving I'm just going to read off, summarize. A 49.1 feet of relief, correct? Is that what we're going to approve as the draft motion?
I believe so.
Required minimum setback of 100, 49.1 feet of relief from the required minimum setback of 100 feet for the septic system pursuant.
Yes.
That's the one you want me to read?
Yes.
Okay. But then we're going to have the condition I need to read.
Yes, I put that in the chat.
Oh, okay. So Manny, you want me to just tell me what to do? I can't see you. Not that I need to see you, but I'm in the Dropbox and with the
okay, you sit tight. We got to come out of recess.
Okay.
And then I'll entertain a motion.
Okay.
So as a board, we're gonna, any final questions, concerns before we come out of recess? Because I'm ready to do this. Okay, we're gonna come out of recess. And I would like to entertain a motion. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, you want me to read the motion, or you want me to say a motion to pass this?
I will entertain a motion. Yeah, please. If you'd like to give me a motion.
Okay.
In the affirmative.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve this. I make a motion to approve the application under the authority granted to the Zoning Board of Review by Rhode Island General Law 452457 and by the Town of Foster's Zoning Ordinance, Article 2, Section 3863. Specifically, the following relief is granted in accordance with the zoning and the application. 49.1 feet of relief from the required minimum setback of 100 feet for septic systems pursuant to Section 38277, parenthetical A, parenthetical, sewage disposal in the Town of Foster zoning ordinances, Article 4. Evidence of the following standards pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 452441 and the Town of Foster zoning ordinance, Article 7, Section 38, 324 has been entered into the record of proceedings. The hardship from which the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure and not to the general characteristics of the surrounding area, and is not due to a physical or economic disability of the applicant. The hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant and does not result primarily from the desire of the applicant to realize greater financial gain. The granting of the requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan upon which the ordinance is based. The relief to be granted is the least relief necessary, and in granting a dimensional variance, the hardship that will be suffered by the owner of the subject property if the dimensional variance is not granted shall amount to more than a mere inconvenience, which shall mean that there is no other reasonable alternative to enjoy a legally permitted beneficial use of one's property. The fact that a use may be more profitable or that a structure may be more valuable after the relief is granted shall not be grounds for relief. Further, it is proposed that the following special conditions based on competent, credible evidence on the record and allowed under Rhode Island General Law 45-24-43 and the Foster Zoning Ordinance, Article 7, Section 3, be applied to the decision in order to promote the intent and purposes of the comprehensive community plan of the town in the zoning ordinance. Okay, so now I need to go back into Zoom and read the chat, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, adding with the following condition.
Okay, chat. The condition that the building permit and certificate of occupancy shall not be issued for the development of the property until the building official is satisfied that any water runoff to abutting properties is contained and mitigated consistent with best practices. End motion. Manny?
Do we have anyone who would
Second.
like to say?
Is that Michelle?
Yes.
Thank you.
Discussion?
My only comment, everybody, please make sure that you completed your standard worksheets and send them to Mike.
Okay, hearing no discussion. Michaela, could you do a roll call for the vote?
Yes. All right. Michelle,
Yay.
Tim,
Yay.
Jim,
Yay.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Manny. Do I call you?
Approved.
Okay.
Okay. So it is passed unanimously. We don't have any minutes to approve this month. We'll do it at our next meeting.
Yeah, we have minutes.
Oh, okay, you do?
Yeah, we have
Sorry.
minutes to approve. It's on the agenda.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to read them, so I'll catch up. I'll catch up now. Actually, Joanne, is it okay if we postpone those to the next meeting? So I have
Yeah.
a chance to review them?
Yeah, that's fine. If everybody else is comfortable, that's not a problem.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Sorry, the traveling got me. It was a surprise. So I'm not caught up on the minutes.
Yeah, so the minutes, Mike just put them up on the, I couldn't find them. They were in an attachment, Manny, but now they're on the Dropbox, or they're actually in an attachment from a last week note from him, but they're there.
We do know you should take a vote to continue the item to next week, or next month rather, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. Anyone would like to make a motion to continue the approval of the minutes till next month?
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue the approval of the minutes till the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in,
Michelle. Michelle,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Manny.
approved. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Michelle,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Manny,
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank
Thank you, everyone. See you next month.
thank you.
Take care.